to use all tools at our disposal to fight tyranny, not simply voting every 2 years.
Me on this morning. For the first time in 10 years, Allie, I not only have hope, today I have confidence that America is going to prevail and long endure. Today is another American of testing. That time has come to us, our generation. And I believe that February 2026 will be remembered as the turning point in America, when Americans once again declared their independence from tyrannical rule. America has had several times of testing, as you alluded to, times that have tried men's souls, in the words of Thomas Paine. The most notable, of course, being at its founding 250 years ago, but also at the time of the Civil War and the Civil Rights era in the 1960s and 70s, and now today. At every time of testing, Americans summoned the courage to speak truth to power in order originally to secure their liberty and their freedoms and their self-government. And then thereafter, over the past 250 years, to retain and resecure their liberty and their government of the people, by the people, and for the people. These several times of testing, Allie, over the past 250 years have now all converged into the times in which we are living in America today. Indeed, they've converged into this very day, even into this very month of February 2026.
Judge, I want to go back to 2021, January 5th, in which you posted a tweet. It was the first of a 7-tweet thread in which you said the only responsibility and power of the vice president under the Constitution is to faithfully count the Electoral College votes as they have been cast. Seems like an obvious thing to say, but that was an important message. That was directed to support Mike Pence in not doing Donald Trump's bidding. That tweet perhaps may have changed the course of history. You paid a price for that. And I think that's important, because right now Americans are realizing that in order to uphold their democracy, and I agree with you, I'm hopeful, but they are understanding that there is a price to pay. We've already seen 2 lives lost in those shootings in Minneapolis. You paid a price for saying something that was just obvious.
Well, Ali, that's really beside the point. The real point is that almost anyone in America could have tweeted the very same words that I tweeted. So basic was the proposition that under the Constitution of the United States of America, an incumbent president cannot ignore the will of the American people and attempt to overturn that election. But it was Mike Pence, then Vice President of the United States of America, who was the hero
Amen.
of that day and of those times in America.
Amen.
It was really his courage that stood up for the United States of America and all that we've ever held dear.
Let me ask you about this ruling yesterday from the Supreme Court. It was on a narrow issue of tariffs and taxation, and one that no one was particularly surprised at. It evolved in the way it should have evolved. Donald Trump thereafter had a remarkable press conference. You spoke to the New York Times about this, in which you said, before the entire world, it was the president's most spectacular display yet of his utter disrespect for the Constitution and his contempt for the Supreme Court of the United States. Tell me about what you saw happening yesterday.
Well, Ali, I, like millions and millions of others around the world, I watched every second of that spectacular display by the President of the United States. And it's really the words "before the entire world" in that New York Times quote that we should focus on. Before the entire world, the President of the United States held that hour-long press conference in which he displayed spectacularly, yet again, his utter disrespect and contempt for the Constitution and for the Supreme Court of the United States in the plainest language, unequivocal language, frightening language to the world and to the American people. I believe that that press conference, not the Supreme Court's decision, and not what could have been the president's response to that decision, but the press conference that will define this president and his presidency for all of American history.
You talk about this disrespect for the court. It was also pretty personal. He issued disrespect toward the justices themselves, including two whom he had appointed. You've talked about this for a long time. There are implications to using this sort of language about judges, and we have seen threats to judges. Amy Coney Barrett's family has suffered because of this. You feel that that's an important line that the president keeps crossing?
Yes, with emphasis on keeps crossing. You know, as I said publicly and even on your show a little over a year ago, on his first day back in office, the president declared war on the rule of law and the federal judiciary. And he's viciously waged that war against the federal judiciary in particular every day since, up to yesterday. Vicious, unprecedented in all of American history. And it may be unprecedented in the history of the world, Ali. I can't imagine any other world leader speaking of that country's Supreme Court in the way that the President of the United States did yesterday. It was vicious, ad hominem. I mean, he called the court a disgrace. You know, he even went so far by the end of the press conference to say that the families of the justices who ruled against him should be ashamed of their family member. I believe that's correct because when I heard those words, Ali, I just shivered for America.
So when I asked you last week about what to do for America, everybody has a different way of doing this, but you did believe that at this point, voting is, as you said to me, voting is necessary but not sufficient. And when I said, what's the extra part? You said that we're going to have to take to the streets en masse. We're going to have to protest peacefully, calmly, nonviolently, but that is now something that is heard and understood that is important.
Yes, that gets back to the way I described the moment at the top of this show and my remarks to the City Bar of New York. It's because of the confluence of the events of this past month in particular, the horrific events in Minneapolis, the Super Bowl halftime show protesting Donald Trump's immigration and deportation policies, and then the tariff decision yesterday and the president's press conference on the Supreme Court's tariff decision. This particular confluence of events over the past month has brought America to, and I believe beyond, the tipping point. And what has happened through all of American history when Americans have been brought to that tipping point and beyond? Well, we know it began with the founders of this great nation. You know, they summoned the courage to dissent, to protest, if you will, and even to wage war against the tyranny that beset the founders at that time. waged a war, the Revolutionary War, Allie, to secure the freedoms and liberties and the rights and the self-government that we have today embodied in the Constitution of the United States. And then thereafter, in the Civil War, same thing. Americans summoned up their courage to protest and dissent from injustice. And then so again in the 60s and 70s, led by Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., every moment in the past 250 years when America itself was at a crossroads, at a moment in which, as Abraham Lincoln said, America might no longer endure, Americans have risen. They've summoned the courage from within, from deep within, to dissent and protest against the evil, whether from within or from without, of the United States of America. That's what I believe we are witnessing today. And that's why I said at the top of the show, for the first time in 10 years, Allie, I have not just hope, but I have the belief that we have come to the turning point and that America and Americans are going to answer the call from our founders and ancestors to defend the United States of America.
I'm with you on this. I am optimistic as well. I also think we are at a turning point. You did end your speech, though, with an important admonition when you quoted Martin Luther King, and you said, what we fear now is the silence of our friends.
That's exactly right. And the reason that I ended that way is because, in my view, certainly for the past 5 years, what America has lacked and what it's desperately needed was courage. First, the courage of our elected representatives, who almost to the person have shown no courage whatsoever.
None.
But in light of that abandonment of the American people, I've said for the past several years, it's up to we the people. Now, there is no one else who's prepared to do this for us. We the people must take back our country.
And I will be speaking to 3 elected representatives in the next few moments, who, from both parties, by the way, who have taken on their role, taken it very seriously. But we hope that that's contagious. Judge Michael Ludig, thank you for being with us. As always, Judge J. Michael Ludig is a former circuit judge on the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit. All right, coming up, the FDA is reversing course on a key vaccine after a major backlash. We'll tell you what this means for you and your health after this.
To acknowledge this type of abuse that has been happening now for quite some time is an abomination to that in which what our ancestors in the past has sacrificed for, pertaining to the very freedoms that we have, or that we're supposed to have, that are at liberty of losing today, that I myself find to be very, very appalling, that these hypocrites that talk out of one side of their mouth but do something completely different on the other side is now coming full circle toward just exactly who these people really are. When it comes to silence, I think anybody can look at my social media platform just within the past 5 or 6 years that there's no way that I don't believe that a person can say, well, this individual by the name of Dennis James Juby Jackson remained silent and wasn't willing to speak out his piece. If I'm not mistaken, I've got several hundred YouTube videos in addition to my Facebook social media that I have been steadily putting out information that even to this day have yet to rally the people in Northwest Tennessee. I don't know if it's because they're scared. I don't know if it's because they don't have enough sense to see what's going on. I don't know if it's because they don't care. But I promise you, whenever the things that we're familiar with pertaining to our traditions are snatched and taken from you, then you'll care. But then it'll be too late. I have tried for 30 plus years of expressing my feelings about interpretations out of the Bible, and I have either been shanghaied, I have either been shunned, I have either been demonized to the point of being dehumanized, or just totally ignored. And I'm talking about the people that are established in this area that is and was and still is supposed to have a great deal of say-so in the pillars of our communities. Whenever we're touching off on something this inevitably this close to seeing what's at peril here, to think that we still have a society that is not willing to speak out other than a few and far between is appalling to me. It's appalling to me. I even went so far as putting on the side of this building out here that my brother and I built while he was still living, pertaining to our patriotic duties being displayed of either give me liberty or give me death. They inevitably didn't want to give me death because they felt like that if they'd done that, then they'd make a martyr out of me. But at the same time, they really haven't given me liberty as far as supporting the Jubilees, Jesus Christ, Windmill Ministries missions here at the Purple Hearts Dragons Veterans Memorial Site at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255. So inevitably, I am forced to do what I've been doing, which I had a minister over in Greenfield tell me a few years ago. But I questioned him about these things, and he said, well, just do what you've been doing. Okay, that sounds like good advice. In other words, don't retract, don't retrieve, don't back up, don't become bitter, don't become unruly. Just continue to do what you've been doing. That's what I've been doing. That's exactly what I've been doing. And I just hope and pray that those that do get a hold of any of my videos, that they will truly understand the sincerity that I've had going all the way back 30 plus years ago, that various people misconstrued my intentions and misconstrued my true motives in where we are today. It's sad.
mRNA technology essentially teaches our bodies how to make proteins to fight viruses without ever exposing us to the live virus itself. Our bodies then recognize the virus and can fight it later if and when we encounter the real thing. That's different from traditional vaccines that typically introduce small protein fragments of an actual live virus into your body to spark immunity. All of this is to say mRNA is widely considered to be a medical breakthrough. Yet last summer, as Health and Human Services Secretary, RFK Jr. canceled $500 million worth of grants and contracts that had been awarded to researching and developing mRNA vaccines. The Trump administration also previously canceled a separate $600 million contract with Moderna to develop an mRNA-based flu vaccine. In 2023, the Nobel Committee awarded its prize for physiology and medicine to the scientists who developed the underlying science behind the technology for mRNA vaccines. The FDA did not provide a detailed explanation for why it suddenly reversed its decision on Moderna's new flu vaccine, but Moderna says it will revise its application to seek accelerated approval for people age 65 or older and standard approval for other age groups. According to Moderna, they expect the FDA to make a decision by August of this year, meaning that if approved, the new mRNA vaccine for flu could be available for older adults by this fall's flu season, which is great news. All right, coming up, President Trump wants a nuclear deal with Iran, and he's reportedly considering a military strike to get it. I'll speak with the top Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee, Adam Smith, about whether diplomacy is possible.
It's actually reached a level today of being spooky, of seeing how deliberately people are becoming careless and driving our society off into a form of chaos, a form of anarchy, a form of confusion, a form of anxiety. It's really scary in seeing how that our society today is just steadily taking one step forward and two steps back in not wanting to help its people, but rather wanting to destroy its people.
Citizens for use by North Korean IT workers. Alexander Didenko of Kyiv was sentenced Thursday inside of a D.C. courtroom. The 29-year-old pleaded guilty back in November to a years-long fraud scheme, which allowed North Koreans to fraudulently work for 40 different American countries in order to earn money for the rogue regime. The judge also ordered Didenko to forfeit more than $1 million, pay $46,000 in restitution, and serve 12 months of supervised release. A German company developing AI robotics will be expanding into the U.S. with the help of a major investor. Here's Christy Kilburn.
These robotic arms are bringing artificial intelligence to the physical world. Its maker, Munich-based Robco, is working to advance so-called physical AI technology. But what is physical AI, and why is it useful?
Yeah, physical AI to us at Robco is the application of AI in the physical world. That means in the manufacturing environment, in the industry, in production environments.
Roman Herzla is the co-founder and CEO of Robco, which was founded in 2020. The German company specializes in modular systems, such as pallet stacking and component engraving. Herzla says his team does all of the setup and pre-trains the robotic arms before customers use it.
With the idea of automating, we go on site, we scan the environment, and we would create a digital concept of that specific industrial environment. So you would see the machines on that shop floor, the environment, the parts that are to be handled, and then we create a digital twin of the robot and that environment, and we would demonstrate the types of tasks we do, the output, the cycle time, the interfaces to existing machinery and safety equipment, for example. And on that basis, we then deploy the actual physical robot in the field.
Robco, whose customers include BMW, is bolstering its position in a rapidly expanding market with a fresh capital injection. Thanks to investors including Volkswagen's venture capital arm and Legato Innovation, Robco announced on Thursday that it's raised $100 million, which will be used to expand its U.S. footprint. Robco says the funding will help accelerate its efforts to scale globally and refine its robotics technology.
Cuba is experiencing a severe garbage crisis, with trash piling up on street corners across the capital and in other cities after weeks of the blockade on the country. A critical fuel shortage has severely crippled the city's waste collection capabilities, prompting health concerns as blackouts last up to 24 hours. Officials say garbage trucks are limited in operations and several hospitals are closed. Reports say food is becoming sparse, with the UN warning the country is headed toward humanitarian collapse. President Trump has urged the nation to make a deal with the U.S. However, the Cuban regime has shown no indication of doing so. Still to come on one.
Well, I can say the same thing about New York, about the trash and other places that's got the homeless people and things falling apart pertaining to our civil structure basically being broke down to the degree that it's becoming harmful to people's health.
Seems. Even after parents leave the hospital, child rearing looks a whole lot different here.
I want to show you something pretty extraordinary. We've come to visit 2.5-month-old Esther. Of course, we expected to find her inside the house, given how cold it is, but instead, here she is, in a stroller, outside, freezing cold temperatures.
You'll see this everywhere in Denmark. Parents swear by the fresh air for their heavily swaddled babies. The family is waiting for a home health nurse to arrive, who will come, free of charge, 5 to 6 times during the baby's first year of life.
Åh, du ser stærk. Ja, skal vi starte med at veje dig? Eller skal vi starte med at måle dig? Hvad? I får jeg ikke senil.
What I'm struck by is Denmark is so different than the United States. You're here. Parental leave, nationalized healthcare system.
Obviously, there's a lot of people in the US who are not that fond of the government actually running anything at all.
It's two completely different countries, right? And it's run differently and politically, governmentally. But I would want for the people in US to have some of the benefits that we experience, because I do believe it benefits me as a parent. I believe it works. So I basically trust the system, right? That they have decided it for me and it works.
Vaccination isn't the only reason that outbreaks are less common here in Denmark. The National Serum Institute, or SSI, here in Copenhagen, keeps meticulous medical records of all Danish citizens, helping them track illnesses to help predict and even prevent outbreaks.
What makes Denmark's superpower this data tracking?
Whenever someone is tested for something, it goes into one database. Whenever someone is vaccinated, it goes into one database. It doesn't go to all kinds of places. It's one place. And then it's quite doable to link all this together.
It's coordinated.
Americans might be uncomfortable with that level
Organized.
of tracking, but it is one of the many factors that makes the Danish system work. It's easy to see reflections of the Maha movement here. Danes emphasize personal health to ward off disease, and they are skeptical of too much medical intervention. But the success of the Danish system is based on so much more than the number of vaccines parents give their children. Nationalized healthcare, high trust, and a lot of strong codependence on one another. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, CNN, Copenhagen, Denmark.
All of this against a worrying backdrop, outbreaks of measles in the United States. Now, coming up next...
We can't really talk. My father is a very difficult person.
The Norwegian knockout that's garnering acclaim and awards as it breaks hearts and cracks smiles in cinemas around the world. Director Joachim...
All right, let's go back to this guy.
I would say that we probably shouldn't be going to war with Iran, but that debate should take place with our elected members, with Congress. That's what the Constitution says. That's what the law says. Tell me about this.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I mean, and we can get into discussion of the wisdom of using military force in Iran right now. I think it would be a mistake, but there's no debating that it would be an act of war that Congress should approve. And I forget who wrote the column. I read it yesterday, basically saying, who thought that I would miss George W. Bush's approach to war? Because yes, back in the run-up to the Iraq war, he presented a very dishonest case. He manipulated facts, he lied about things. But there was a premise behind what he was doing, and that premise was that he needed the support of Congress and he needed the support of the American people. Donald Trump doesn't believe in that premise. He doesn't think he needs the support of the American people or Congress. He thinks he can do it on his own.
Which is worse, doing it on your own or lying about it to get it passed to begin with? Which is worse?
Absolutely ought to be brought to Congress for...
The American people has been handed a bad set of goods. The American people has been bamboozled going back 30 plus years ago, whenever the first Iraqi war, Desert Storm and Desert Shield, going back to the Reagan and the Bush era. And this is now caught up with us.
Representatives Gottheimer and Lawler are opposing what Ro Khanna and Massey and people like you are doing, and trying to constrain the president. They're saying that that would be seen as a sign of weakness to put constraints on the president. I don't think I agree with that philosophically. I don't think that seeing America as a country that deliberates properly about what it's going to do, I think that sounds like a sign of stability.
Absolutely. And this is an important lesson that I learned. I actually, I wound up voting in favor of the Iraq War resolution back in 2003. And a big part of my motivation, I was like 5 years into being a member of Congress. I was 36 years old. I wanted to have respect for the executive branch. We'd had the 9/11 attacks. Our country was clearly under threat. The Afghanistan war was going on. If the president needed our support, I felt like, well, we should probably give it. But I learned exactly what you just said. Now, our Constitution, our country is stronger when Congress exercises its independent authority and makes decisions on its own. It doesn't just give a blank check to the president. That's why we have our system of checks and balances in place. Now, to your other point, the Iranian regime is awful, terrible, and horrible. But that's another lesson that we've learned in the last 20 years. It is not as easy to replace awful, terrible, horrible regimes and create a better situation afterwards as we once thought it was. The same could have been said about the Taliban and Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi and a whole bunch of other people.
On and on.
We stumbled into conflicts. We should absolutely be putting pressure on Iran, making sure they don't build a nuclear weapon, which is, by the way, why the president shouldn't have torn up the JCPOA that was stopping.
Right, we had a deal. That was the Iran nuclear deal in 2015.
Exactly.
That was deemed to have been working by everybody who looks at these things. It was a deal and it was working.
Yes. Now, so launching a war against a country leads you into the unknown and creates major costs in terms of lives and casualties and disruptions. And I just think that we should not be viewing the U.S. military as the easy button to solve every problem in the world. It's what we should have learned over the last 20 years. I think diplomacy, coalitions, working with our partners and allies in the region and putting pressure on Iran in a variety of different ways is absolutely appropriate.
Right.
But people need to appreciate what launching a war is. It is incredibly unpredictable and dangerous, especially in the Middle East.
Congressman, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for being with us, the Democratic Congressman Adam Smith of Washington. All right, up next, I will speak with the Republican Congressman Don Bacon of Nebraska about why the Supreme Court's ruling has him feeling vindicated, plus what this tariff news means for his state, where the majority...
All right, this is going to go back to the very thing that I tried to warn my viewers about regarding Donald J. Trump going in the wrong direction with all these tariffs. Whenever the American people has to take it on the cheek, in which it's obviously obvious that that's what's happening here, proof should be in the pudding that people such as myself that was trying to eliminate this situation becoming even more dire, proof should be in the pudding that I was right about not voting for Donald J. Trump. I couldn't vote for the Republican Party due to the fact of how that they was conducting their activities neither. I don't know what it's going to take to bring the people around. And I guess if it takes starvation, if it takes disease, if it takes hardship upon the mankind like mankind has never ever experienced before, well then so let it be said, so let it be written, so let it be done. I have tried to prevent from all of these things from occurring, going all the way back to 1989, whenever my son and I first started issuing out warnings and advisories to the American people by expressing and explaining to them what was occurring and what is predicted to occur. The very things that we was trying to prevent are now occurring. But what's even worse is that now that the things are occurring, I still don't see a movement from the people. So I tend to wonder, have they all drinking out of the same well? Are they all basically brainwashed and memorized to the point that they really don't know who to trust or what to trust or or where to go? The Northern Star pertaining to the Bible, pertaining to the teachings of Christ, has never, ever misled us in the right direction to go. Though we may pay the ultimate cost for by standing up for trueness, for standing up for justice, for standing up for the things that are right. It has never, ever misled us, and it never will. Just like Christ said that he would not abandon us, he would not forsake us, that he would stick closer to us, even unto a brother or a sister, that he would be there until the ends of the world, indicating that he's not going to leave. He's not going to abandon us. He's not going to forsake us. He's not going to leave us on our own. But if the people aren't willing to make rational decisions in that, then I wash my hands of any type of guilt. Though I'm remorseful of what is occurring because it's bringing that much more hardship upon to the innocent. The fact of the matter is, I've tried to be that open voice. I've tried to go out beyond the perimeters of normalcy or comfortableness and say, you know what, this is where we're at. This is where we're heading. This is where we're going. If we don't change or alter our decisions in the trajectory of where various politicians has led us into. And of course, whenever you don't hold various political parties accountable, regardless whether it be on a local level, state level, or federal level, then that tells me that the rules of justice that we want to swear by pertaining to our judicial system is phony and fake to begin with, especially whenever you have either a 2 or a 3 embedded party. In other words, do as I say and not as I do type scenario, that this set of rules is for this set of people, and this set of rules is for this set of people, and maybe even this set of rules are for this set of people. What the Supreme Court done yesterday helps to bring in alignment back to what our original founders, our builders, put in play pertaining to checks and balances, to slap Donald Trump in the face by telling him what you have done is illegal, what you have done has backfired on you, and what you thought that you was trying to prevent in happening now is almost like pouring gas on the fire and making it even worse. I have been telling my viewers this again and again and again, and the type of response that I got was ultimate silence. The type of response that I got was ultimate no support. So, looking at it from my perspective, especially viewing all the material that I put out there to open media, I'm thinking to myself, similar towards what Christ thought whenever he went up into the mountain. And I truly believe that this was a time of his most dire despair. And he looked down upon Jerusalem and he said, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, I have tried to help you. I have tried to lead you. I've tried to inspire you. Christ used the example towards a mother hen with little chicklings, that I've gathered you together as a hen would gather her chickens or her little chicks, and you would not listen. You would not render. You would not listen. You would not support. You would not take hold. And that's basically the same type of feeling that I have today. And the primary reason why that I had to hunker down here at this address in identifying that obviously this thing has reached a climatic form to the degree of doomed and despair. And it wasn't until yesterday that maybe there was a little bit of light that popped on, bing, in that dark tunnel that we've been in now, going on 30 plus years. A little bit of light come on, boom, like, wow, maybe there is hope. But then again, here we see Donald Trump retaliate with that many more mandates to be put upon to different supply chains that ultimately, in the end, are going to come back and hurt us again. We are dealing with a damned if you do and damned if you do not do scenario. And until the American people wake up to that, first of all, in identifying that we've been bamboozled, we've been deceived, we've been hurt, we've been led down a wrong corridor, a wrong path. And secondly, holding these people accountable for what that they either done or didn't do that they should have done. And thirdly, having enough brass about us to get up and make changes. Make the right, proper changes for not only ourselves, but for our loved ones and for our children and our children's children and those that depend upon us. Because if we don't do it, I promise you, they're going to be pulling on our pants legs or our dress tails, looking up at us in the hereafter world, asking, how come you didn't speak out? How come you didn't stand up? How come you didn't voice your opinion? How come you didn't fight for the defenseless? How come? How come? How come? Is that what you want? Is that what you want to hear? The ones that you love, the ones that love you, the ones that are dependent upon you, is that what you want to hear them in the hereafter life say, how come? How come? That's not what I want to hear. Using the Bible as a guiding light, because the Bible has always been the guiding light. And to think that a group of people here in Northwest Tennessee was willing to not only divert the truth in trying to stain an individual as being a loyal follower of the Lord Jesus Christ, but actually put out false accusations about the individual as far as character assassination. Was it to be expected? Probably. Why do I say that? Because even Jesus warned us. He said, for if they hated me, they'll hate you. Even Jesus said that if they persecuted me, they'll persecute you. Even Jesus said that if they lied on you, they'll lie. If they lied on me, they'll lie on you too as well. Jesus has pre-warned us and told us ahead of time what was going to happen. Even went so far as Jesus saying that they would throw us in front of magistrates. They would throw us in front of courts. They would throw us in front of judges. But Jesus also said to think it not what to say in that hour, for it will be the Holy Spirit that works in you and for the kingdom of God that will inspire you of knowing what to say and what to do. And that's the only reason why to this day that I'm not held under some sort of judicial system, either in a local setting or a state setting or a federal setting, is because it was the power of the Almighty God working through the Lord Jesus Christ and the precious Holy Spirit that has helped to liberate me from each and every trial and an event that has happened in my life in the past 30 plus years. Has it had a psychological and a physical and emotional toll in my life? Well, sure it has. Sure it has. I probably wouldn't have near the gray hair that I have. Sure it has. I mean, I went through losses of family members, especially my son recently in the past 5 months. You don't think these things has emotionally had an effect in my life? Sure they have. But what's most importantly is the things that my son and I was trying to achieve by diverting the American people from going off into, that now we're seeing you going off into. It's unbelievable in how, I guess the right word would be negligent, that certain people are willing to walk off into the mouth of the volcano because everybody else is walking off into the mouth of the volcano. I got news for you. If I see somebody walking off into the mouth of the volcano, I'm not going to walk off into the mouth of the volcano just because somebody else did. Just like following orders that are not legal. I'm not going to follow illegal orders. If the order is illegal, if the order is unjust, if the order is rectified towards it not being correct or just, I don't have to follow that order. Now, does that mean that I'm going to be exempt from the consequences by not following that order? No, it does not. No, there's going to be consequences. But now we're starting to see the true consequences that's fallen upon the masses. That's fallen upon all the people. And these are the very areas that my son and I tried desperately to prevent from the American people going off into, and now they're off into it. It's knocking on our door. The storm isn't coming. The storm is here. The storm is here. I mean, just the other night, I stopped in Milan, Tennessee, right before you get to Walmart, and I got some pizza. Me and my dog Jack, we like to eat pizza every now and then. And these two young girls started questioning me. They must have felt the Holy Spirit in my presence. And they got to question me about the end of the world and end time events. And first of all, I was admiredly amazed of their concern. But secondly, I voiced my opinion about their opinions, and both of our opinions went just like that, hand in hand. That there is absolutely no doubt the signs that we're seeing today is all leading in a direction towards the end of the world. There's too much going on for a logical person to ignore. Now, if you choose to ignore these things, well, then expect the consequences for ignoring them. If you choose not to fight for your neighbors and your community and those that are defenseless, then expect the consequences. If you choose to take your hands and put them underneath your hips and take your head as an ostrich and stick it into the sand and hope and pray that consequences isn't going to come your way, good luck in that, because there's going to be consequences. There always has been, and there always will be. And the consequences can be just as much on a parallel bad side as they are consequences on the good side. And this is the area that I've tried to express again and again and again, even to my friend that's an investigator, that, hey, if you take your nuggets, if you take your gold, if you take your salary, if you take your retirement, if you take the things that you have put in your 401k and you made good rational decisions towards, and it's building up your own bank account, and you're not using those things to glorify the kingdom of God, you're going to be just as it was in the Bible, that it talks about the unprofitable servant that buried his talents. Buried them, thinking that he was going to be protecting them. And I don't think I have to resignate toward just exactly what the Bible says about that person, about what type of reward that he's going to get, because it says that the talents that he's got will be taken from him and given to those that didn't have no talents. If you don't use your abilities to fight for the kingdom of God in every perspective that you can think of, then eventually God will take that in which what he had already given you away from you, and he will give it to somebody else, regardless whether it be money, regardless whether it be talents, regardless whether it be health, regardless whether it be whatever. He'll take it from you, he'll hew down the tree, and he'll take that and give it to those that are using it for the glory of God. every item that I have put on social media for the past 5 or 6 years has been in the glory of God in some form or fashion. Now, does that mean that I'm perfect? No. Does that mean I haven't made mistakes? No. Does that mean that sometimes I utter and sometimes diminish the quality of myself because I didn't study enough or whatever enough? Probably, because I'm going to make mistakes. I'm not professional in this. I'm not a professional movie director. I'm not a professional poet or writer, but I'm learning. I'm getting better. I'm putting my messages out there, and there are some people that are watching and listening to them and are paying attention. But I'm still not seeing that grand emotional, psychological, spiritual movement that it's going to require for all of us to do a 180, just as it talks about in the Bible, for God has not found our works perfect yet, to go back, and do thy first works over again, or else he will throw us off into a sick bed. You take all that rubbish that's going on right now that it talked about in Cuba, and that I talked about in New York pertaining to the garbage not being taken care of, all that's doing, and we know what genealogy is about. We know what hygiene is about. We know what science and medical breakthroughs are about. All that's going to do is bring that much more sickness and compulsion of disease in those areas where they let that garbage just sit and lie endless, because it becomes toxic. Once you start getting around it, once you start breathing it, once it gets on your skin, once it gets on your in your clothing, it becomes toxic. Just like secondhand smoke. They claim that secondhand smoke is actually worse than the person that's smoking the cigarettes themselves. I believe that. Because that secondhand smoke is now entering into your body. First of all, the person that's smoking has already built up a tolerance against that smoke, against that poison in that tobacco. Because of that, their body is automatically fighting. Boom, 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 boom. It's fighting. It's wanting to survive, right? Well, the person that hasn't been smoking, they haven't built up no tolerances like that. Their immune system is not coordinated in the proper DNA towards them fighting off that same type of chemical imbalance, to the degree that whenever they get around secondhand smoke, it gets in their hair, it gets in their clothes, it gets on their skin, it gets in their lungs. But their body isn't adapted to it. So it's going to have more profound effect upon the person that doesn't smoke than it is those that do. Now, have you ever heard a doctor explain it to you that way? Nope. Just like the woman that had her child outside getting used to the outdoors. My mother used to do the exact same thing up in Chicago whenever we were just youngsters. I'm talking about infants, less than 6 months old, year old. They'd purposely put us outside. They'd wrap us up, put us outside. That way we would get adapted to the cold. That way our immune system wouldn't be overloaded. That way our immune system would know how to respond and react to that type of feature that we was being exposed to at that particular time. I think if you was to do that today, if you was to take an infant and put it outside whenever it was 20 below zero, you'd probably have the healthcare committee down here getting you for child abuse or something. Why? Because we have been misled by all these false entities that has been trying to lead us in the wrong direction because they wasn't using common sense ideology. You know, I can sit here and I can complain. I can get in the floor. I can throw a pissy fit. I can do all the above, and it isn't going to change the facts of that in which what we're experiencing right now. It isn't going to change a thing. Is it going to change? Not one iota. Here Donald Trump is trying to. Let me get this real quick. Hello? Hello?
Hey, Dennis.
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me?
I do hear you.
Excellent. What's going on?
Nothing. Nothing. Nothing's going on other than I slept a little late this morning, me and the dog, and we've had a good time this morning. I'm making a movie right now, which is rolling. And I'm talking to Mr. David Bennett. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, pretty good, sir. Oh, I got activity. No kidding. Wow, I'm going to have to follow this guy. I guess I'm going to hit it here. I may end up having to let you go.
Okay. That'll work.
Yeah, let me, looks like I got activity, and
How close are you to the Army base up there?
I'm not sure. It can't be very far.
I mean, you're not around the gates, are you?
No.
Gate 1, Gate 2, Gate 3. I think they got 5 gates in total.
No.
I used to work right in front of Gate 1.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, for Mr. Bumpus. Sure did. Josh Bumpus. At one time, him and his family owned 3 different body shops there in Clarksville, outside of Fort Campbell.
Oh, okay.
Yep, I used to watch them going in and out all the time.
I gotcha.
Of course, I had a shakedown down in Redstone Army Base in Alabama one time because I got too close to them, and they wound up, the MPs grabbed me up and took me in and kept me for a couple hours, and then they let me go.
Wow.
That wasn't a good time.
No.
No, that was during the time whenever they was basically trying to shove something down me because I was asking too many questions out in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, toward being a private journalist investigator.
I gotcha.
But you got somebody under surveillance right now? You're following somebody right now?
Yes, sir.
Well, let me let you go.
All right. Well, yeah, I'll talk at you later. I probably should focus here.
Absolutely.
All right, sir. You have a good one. I'll catch you later.
Yep, bye. All right, let's go back to this right here, what they're talking about here.
Inside the United States, foreign companies aren't paying the tariffs, which means that despite Donald Trump's messaging suggesting otherwise, economists across the political spectrum largely agree on one point. In practice, Americans bear most of the cost of these tariffs. Now, before Trump's tariffs, between 2018 and 2023, tariff collections generated, on average, roughly $91 billion in federal revenue per year. Take a look at the bar on the right side of your screen, though. Last year, Trump's supercharged tariffs generated 3 times as much money, which is significant, but far short of the trillions of dollars Donald Trump repeatedly claimed foreign countries were paying. Foreign governments didn't pay those tariffs. America's importers paid those tariffs, and some of that cost was passed on to American businesses and consumers. At the same time, Trump and members of his administration argued that refunds would be difficult if courts later ruled that the tariffs were unlawful because the money had already been spent. Which leads to a question many Americans may reasonably ask. If you bought a car last year and you paid $1,000 more because tariffs raised the prices, do you get your money back? Probably not. If refunds are ordered by lower courts, the money would first go to the companies that paid the tariffs, the manufacturers or the distributors, maybe even the retailers. Whether consumers ever see lower prices would depend on lawsuits and contracts and market competition. Economics moves forward quickly. It rarely moves backward the same way. And after almost a year of economic uncertainty that supporters said would fundamentally reshape global trade, let's look at what actually changed. The U.S. trade deficit, with which Donald Trump is obsessed, improved, or was reduced, let's say, by roughly $2.1 billion, which sounds like a lot of money. But the U.S. economy is nearly $30 trillion. 2-point-something billion is a rounding error. Barely measurable after almost a year of economic uncertainty and retaliatory tariffs from other countries and repeated supply chain adjustments. The effects of the tariffs have been widespread. Farmers faced retaliation from trading partners overseas. Manufacturers paid more for raw materials at home. Courts saw trade volumes rise and fall unpredictably. And now states and businesses may face another period of uncertainty as Donald Trump imposes these new tariffs. And courts decide whether refunds are required and companies adjust their supply chains yet again. But what happened yesterday was not just a trade decision by the Supreme Court, because tariffs are not only trade policy, they are in fact taxes. And the Constitution clearly states who has the power to create taxes. It's Congress, not the president. That division of power was not accidental. In fact, trade and tariffs were among the very first problems that the framers of the Constitution were trying to solve. Under the Articles of Confederation, the young United States had no unified trade policy. Individual states imposed their own tariffs on goods coming from abroad, and sometimes even on goods coming from other states. Foreign governments exploited that disunity, negotiating separately with states and playing American ports against one another. The result was economic instability and political weakness. So when the framers met in Philadelphia for the Constitutional Convention in 1787, one of their clearest decisions was to place control over trade and taxation firmly in the hands of Congress, which they deemed to be the branch closest to the people and most accountable through regular elections. Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution gives Congress the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, and to regulate commerce with foreign nations. Those words are specific and deliberate. Alexander Hamilton argued that national control over tariffs was essential to economic stability. James Madison warned that concentrating taxing authority in a single executive would risk exactly the kind of unchecked power that the Revolution had been fought to escape. Tariffs, in other words, were never meant to be tools of unilateral presidential action. They were meant to be debated publicly, to be negotiated politically, and to be enacted collectively. For much of American history, tariffs were the federal government's primary source of revenue, long before the income tax existed. That's the reason the framers treated them as fundamentally legislative powers, not executive powers. So when the Supreme Court ruled yesterday that emergency authority cannot substitute for Congress when setting tariffs, it wasn't creating any new law. It was just reaffirming one of the oldest economic principles in the Constitution itself. And so the question before the court was not entirely new. It was, in many ways, the same question that the framers confronted at the founding. Who should control the power to tax and shape the nation's economic relationship with the world? One elected leader acting alone, or the representatives of the people acting together through Congress? Yesterday's ruling placed the court squarely within that long constitutional tradition.
Yes, it did.
Writing for the court, Chief Justice John Roberts said, quote, "The framers did not vest any part of the taxing power in the executive branch," end quote. Any part. That sentence does more than settle a dispute about tariffs. It restates a founding principle that economic power, like political power, must be shared, debated, and limited. And at a time when many Americans wonder whether institutions still work the way they were designed to, yesterday's decision offered a quiet reminder. The Constitution does not prevent disagreement or ambition, but it can still set boundaries, even when a president tests how far those boundaries can go.
That's right.
Joining me now, two friends, Chrystia Freeland, the former Deputy Prime Minister of Canada and the Minister of Finance. She currently serves as an economic advisor to the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Also joining us, Norm Ornstein, a Senior Fellow Emeritus at the American Enterprise Institute and a contributing editor at The Atlantic. Good morning to both of you. Thank you for being with us. Chrystia, I want to start with this. A couple of hours ago, I talked to Fred Hochberg, who is the former chair of the Export-Import Bank of the United States. I just want you to listen to what he said about the implications for the Canada-U.S. trade agreement in this development.
This is a real political defeat for President Trump and makes it very difficult because if he doesn't do anything, he looks weak. And unfortunately, he will likely do something kind of more rash and irrevocable. The USMCA, the agreement between the United States, Canada, and Mexico, I think is very much at risk as a result of this. I can see the president just trying to blow that deal up. It comes up for review in July. So that is an immediate casualty that we could be seeing from this decision.
Okay, so USMCA, what in Canada they called CUSMA. What do you make of those comments?
So, Ali, I am by nature an optimist. I think you have to be to have gone into politics. And so I want to offer an optimistic possibility here. I am hopeful that this court decision, and I agree with you, it is very significant, gives the United States and the world an opportunity for a reset. The fact is that tariffs are not popular in the United States, particularly tariffs against U.S. allies. You know, the people who voted for President Trump didn't vote to have a huge fight with Canada. Americans generally like Canada. They didn't even vote to put big taxes on coffee imported from Brazil. And so the hopeful side of me says this can be an opportunity for a reset, for the president and his administration to adopt a policy where you have a reasonable, positive trading relationship with your allies like Canada. Remember, the USMCA, CUSMA, is President Trump's deal. I negotiated it with his administration. And when we were done, he said, it is the best trade deal ever. And it is a really good deal. And what I think countries like Canada could offer President Trump, what U.S. allies could offer President Trump in exchange is say, look, we're your friends. Trading with us is good for us and it's good for you. It's a win-win. But you were right about one big thing on trade, and you've been right about it since 2016. And that is that China's admission to the WTO did hollow out the Rust Belt. It did hurt U.S. manufacturing workers. And in fact, it hurt workers across the industrialized economies. So instead of fighting with us, why don't we form a common front, reset global trade, fix the mistake that was made when China joined the WTO? That, for me, would be a positive outcome from this very important Supreme Court decision.
So, Norm, this is the danger in having smart guests on your show, because they say smart things that seem logical and the way things should unfold.
Reasonable.
Since Donald Trump met with this defeat at the Supreme Court, he then decided he would unilaterally raise tariffs by 10% globally. Then this morning he said 15%. I'm with Christian. Like, this is an off-ramp. This is an exit ramp for him. This is a free pass. Whatever you want to call it, he's got an opportunity to say, I fought for tariffs and they didn't let me, and then come up with a better policy that actually works.
Christia, as usual, is spot on and absolutely right, and the odds of this happening are slim to none, and as George W. Bush would say, Slim just left the building. For Trump, this is an obsession, and it's an obsession that has no rational basis whatsoever.
There you go.
But remember, he did say this was the greatest trade deal ever with the Canadian-Mexican Free Trade Agreement, and then he trashed his own deal.
Yep.
And, you know, not to be the pessimist here, and I don't want to be, but in the glass half empty element of this, Ali, let's point out that in this slam dunk case, in this case where there was little doubt that Trump had absolutely misused the whole notion of an emergency, putting additional tariffs on Switzerland because he didn't like the way the prime minister talked to him. That's an economic emergency. 3 of our 9 Supreme Court justices completely ignored or denied the stark language of the Constitution that you mentioned and voted to let him have this authority. So this, I hope, is not a one-off decision by the Supreme Court, putting at least a little bit of a curb on the power of the president. But one would hope that somebody inside the administration, and looking at that array of people behind him, it's not going to be the clown who is our Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, who will talk some sense to him. If only we could have Christia whispering in his ear. But I'm afraid we have a bunch of people like Kevin Hassett and Howard Lutnick who will just tell him, go for it, put on more tariffs. And that means more taxes on average Americans. That's the key point here. As you said, whatever money comes in, 90 to 95% of it is paid for by the farmers and the consumers. And it's not, as his economic advisor said, as Scott Bessent said, the billionaires who are paying it.
Right.
It's the average person.
That's right.
I'm going to ask you guys to hold on for a second. I want to take a quick break. We'll continue our conversation with Christian Veal.
What they're saying is exactly on head, pertaining to the consumer being the one that's taking it on the shoulder. I tried to express that before he ever become president the second time, and once more my words, obviously, was ignored, and it went in one ear and out the other. Now we are feeling. We're not just seeing. We're not just hearing. We are feeling the effects of that, in which what I have told you by putting out warnings and advisories of, that even to this day is still being ignored. So naturally, somebody like myself is going to be like Jesus Christ, in a sense, towards going up into the mountain and saying, I tried to help you. You wouldn't listen. Now you're on your own. The fault falls upon the feet of those that had the ability to read and write and understand what was going on, but they chose to remain silent. They chose to keep their hands under their hips. They chose to take their head and stick it in the sand like an ostrich, hoping that they wasn't going to be seen. But the whole time we was watching them. We was seeing them. We was seeing you, Donald Trump. We was seeing you, Tommy Moore. We was seeing you, Judge Pence. We was seeing you, David Moore, Chief of Police, ex-Chief of Police over in Martin, Tennessee. We was seeing you, Governor Randy Brundage. We was seeing you, all these other people that basically was trying to ruin Dennis James Hubie Jackson, because either they didn't understand him or they didn't like the message coming from the messenger. I cannot help it that the Bible is written the way that it's written. I didn't write the Bible. All I am is a messenger to the Bible, and a messenger to the things that has occurred in my personal life, and a messenger to the things that the Bible has already predicted that is going to occur. And to think that they was going to shove that down my throat right here in Northwest Tennessee, to think that my brother and I was left on our own to fight in our own defenses because we couldn't get the courts up here in Dresden, Tennessee, to fight in our corners, is a disgrace. It's a disgrace to the laws, and it's a disgrace to my family heritage going back into the late 1800s, early 1900s, pertaining to my great-grandfather and his wife that was a pillar of this society over here that helped to establish this part of Tennessee, basically during the time of peril that was going on in the existence of us being who we are. It's a disgrace. And to think that I come back in 2014 and all hell busted loose in our lives to the degree that it literally drove my brother down into an early grave at the age of 51. And to top it off, now your demons have basically interceded and now taken my son from me. There's no one else left. I have nothing else to lose. And by me losing my life is gained. You are the ones that have dug your own pits. The fault falls upon your feet, especially those locally around here that could have intervened, that could have changed this, that could have supported love, grace, mercy, and peace, but you chose not to. But you chose not to. And you wonder how come I say good luck to all of us? Quit wondering. Please quit wondering.
Of Canada, and Norm Ornstein, Senior Fellow Emeritus at the American Enterprise Institute. Christian, before you were in politics, you were a journalist, a financial journalist. You still are a journalist.
Now, naturally, if you're making $80,000 to $140,000 a year, like most of these state workers are, up in these high-ranking positions, you ain't going to feel the effects of a 15 to 30% hike, either on food or on other manufactured items. You're not going to feel that because you are making enough money to confiscate the differences of. But how about all the people that's not making that kind of money? How about all the people that are on fixed income, such as myself, that now has to manage each and every dime?
One thing to recognize is not all trade is the same. And I do think, and this might be an unpopular opinion to voice with your listeners, but President Trump is not wrong about everything. I think one of the reasons that he was first elected in 2016 is he was one of the first leading American politicians to be very clear about the China threat. And he was very clear. He said to U.S. manufacturing workers, to U.S. workers in the Rust Belt, I see you. I see that your jobs are being hollowed out because we admitted China to the WTO, and that put you in an absolutely untenable situation.
In jeopardy.
And people felt heard, and I think that's an important reason he was elected. He was right about that. And the thing is that if President Trump wanted today to lead, America and its allies in resetting the global trading relationship with China, I think he could absolutely do that. And actually, at the end of the day, that would be good for China too. But beating up on trade partners like Canada is absolutely absurd, and it hurts regular Americans. Norm is right. Tariffs on Canadian goods are a tax. They're something that people feel in their pocketbooks.
Exactly.
And I want to give you one particular example because I think it is the most absurd tariff that's in place right now. And that is the 50% U.S. tariff on Canadian aluminum. Now, aluminum is basically electricity in solid form. To produce the amount of aluminum that Canada was selling to the U.S. before the tariffs requires basically 4 Hoover dams. So the United States is basically making energy more expensive at a time when I think regular Americans would like their power bills to go down.
Exactly.
And at a time when AI means that there is such a hunger for electricity in the United States.
Exactly.
Norm, I think Christian's right. They're like everything. So sometimes Trump's a little bit right? The global trading system can use repair. But this is a tricky one because Donald Trump's going against a lot of Republican orthodoxy. I just was talking to Don Bacon. There are Republicans who are free traders who are they're free traders as opposed to protectionists.
That's right.
We're stuck. I'm not sure Donald Trump, to your point about slim to nothing, I'm not sure Donald Trump is in a position to fix this, but somebody should. Someone should take global trade threats seriously and be surgical about how we approach them.
And, let me just make a couple of points following on what Chris just said. She's right. Trump was right. But he's betrayed all of those people to whom he made those promises. And working Americans who voted for him, believing that he was the way out from government that had betrayed them, it's worked the other way around.
Yep.
The fact is that he could indeed make changes here that would work much better. But, let's also add the point that Christy made about aluminum and increased energy. Trump is undermining our energy productivity by basically conducting a war on all forms of energy other than the worst fossil fuels. And that's going to mean that we're going to need more electricity, as we are for AI, and we're not going to have it available, or it's going to become far more costly. So we're in a bad place right now. And if only we had somebody inside the administration or in Congress. Don Bacon talked about it. Where was Congress when Trump violated their most fundamental power, the taxing power, and the Republicans in Congress did nothing?
Yes, sir.
And to expect them now to step up, even though most of them, I think, are inherently free traders, you have to be skeptical.
Christian, I want to ask you on the topic of free trade, which was a huge topic in Canada for many years. Maybe we as journalists didn't paint the fullest picture for everyone, right? Maybe freer trade is generally good and makes people generally, or makes countries generally more prosperous and enhances GDP. The problem is in the last mile. We didn't share the spoils of trade properly. So rich people got really rich off of free trade, and working people's like, what happened? All I did was lose my job or lose my factory, or my town got hollowed out. This concept of free trade was not applied evenly.
Yeah, look, Ellie, I think you're absolutely right. And I think also in this notion that the world was flat, that we were in this new sort of end of history nirvana, what we also overlooked is not all trade is created equal. I think the biggest mistake was China's admission to the WTO. And there was this miscalculation. There was this notion that China would change the way it ran its economy and move more towards our system. And China didn't do that. It remained a state capitalist economy with intentional oversupply, with intentional suppression of consumer demand at home. That just hasn't been sustainable for our economies. And a smart government, a smart United States would recognize that and would work with its allies to change it. And there is a real opportunity now because thanks to the Trump tariffs, China's oversupply is now hitting Europe, and it's hitting Europe very, very hard. And I think the United States could find a real partner in Europe there. I think the other thing that we didn't recognize about trade is, I think there was this notion that if you trade with a country, then you make war impossible. There was this great Tom Friedman line. I don't know if you remember it. It was his golden arches theory of war, that two countries that both had a McDonald's would never go to war with each other. Russia disproved that. Mm-hmm. And, countries like Germany believed if we have a close trading relationship with Russia, they were building a new gas pipeline to Russia, then we will be at peace and, we will have peace on our continent. It didn't work that way. And instead, the economic dependency on Russia has hurt a lot. So I do think you have to take security into account when you build a trading relationship. The thing is, though, what better partner does the United States have in the world than Canada?
Good points. Thank you to both of you. I really appreciate this important discussion. Christian Freeland is the former Deputy Prime Minister of Canada. Norm Ornstein is a Senior Fellow Emeritus at the American Enterprise Institute and a contributing editor at The Atlantic. All right, coming up, over 64,000 people in Vermont are employed by farms and food-related businesses. The Vermont Senator Peter Welch joins me now to react.
There you go. We're going to end this here pertaining to what we have seen here. I wish that things was different. I wish that people would have listened to me. I wish that I wish that they find Nancy. I wish for a lot of things, but you can wish in one hand, and as the old saying goes, poo-poo in the other, and see which one fills up the quickest. Friends, we're going to have to use common sense ideals if we're going to survive this, because we are not approaching the storm. We are actually in the storm, and so many people now have come to the realization of feeling the very economical pains that I have been talking about and feeling now for quite some time, ever since I come back to Northwest Tennessee in 2017. Good luck to all of us. God bless America. God bless our troops. And God bless our endeavors toward which way not only the American people go, but which way the world goes regarding peace and utopia. I love you. I love you in the Lord. And shalom.